Ingersoll on Humboldt, from the works of Robert G. Ingersoll, Volume 1, Lectures, Humboldt. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Brian Levine, Burbank, California. Lecture 2, Humboldt. The universe is governed by law. Great men seem to be part of the infinite, brothers of the mountains and the seas. Humboldt was one of these. He was one of those serene men, in some respects like our own Franklin, whose names have all the luster of a star. He was one of the few great enough to rise above the superstition and prejudice of his time, and to know that experience, observation, and reason are the only basis of knowledge. He became one of the greatest men in spite of having been born rich and noble, in spite of position. I say in spite of these things because wealth and position are generally the enemies of genius and the destroyers of talent. It is often said of this or that man that he is a self-made man, that he was born of the poorest and humblest parents, and that with every obstacle to overcome, he became great. This is a mistake. Poverty is generally an advantage. Most of the intellectual giants of the world have been nursed at the sad and loving breast of poverty. Most of those who have climbed highest on the shining ladder of fame commenced at the lowest round. They were reared in the straw-thatched cottages of Europe, in the log houses of America, in the factories of the great cities, in the mists of toil, in the smoke and din of labor, and on the verge of want. They were rocked by the feet of mothers whose hands at the same time were busy with the needle or the wheel. It is hard for the rich to resist the thousand allurements of pleasure, and so I say that Humboldt, in spite of having been born to wealth and high social position, became truly and grandly great. In the antiquated and romantic castle of Tegel, by the side of the pine forest, on the shore of the charming lake, near the beautiful city of Berlin, the great Humboldt, 100 years ago today, was born. And there he was educated after the method suggested by Rousseau, Comte, the philologist and critic, and the intellectual Kunth being his tutors. There he received the impressions that determined his career. There the great idea that the universe is governed by law took possession of his mind. And there he dedicated his life to the demonstration of this sublime truth. He came to the conclusion that the source of man's unhappiness is his ignorance of nature. After having received the most thorough education at that time possible, and having determined to what end he would devote the labors of his life, he turned his attention to the sciences of geology, mining, mineralogy, botany, the distribution of plants, the distribution of animals, and the effects of climate upon man. All grand physical phenomena were investigated and explained. From his youth, he had felt a great desire for travel. He felt, as he says, a violent passion for the sea, and longed to look upon nature in her wildest and most rugged forms. He longed to give a physical description of the universe, a grand picture of nature, to account for all phenomena, to discover the laws governing the world, to do away with that splendid delusion called special providence, and to establish the fact that the universe is governed by law. To establish this truth was and is of infinite importance to mankind. That fact is the death knell of superstition. It gives liberty to every soul, annihilates fear, and ushers in the age of reason. The object of this illustrious man was to comprehend the phenomena of physical objects in their general connection, and to represent nature as one great whole, moved and animated by internal forces. For this purpose he turned his attention to descriptive botany, traversing distant lands and mountain ranges, to ascertain with certainty the geographical distribution of plants. He investigated the laws regulating the differences of temperature and climate and the changes of the atmosphere. He studied the formation of the earth's crust, explored the deepest mines, ascended the highest mountains, and wandered through the craters of extinct volcanoes. He became thoroughly acquainted with chemistry, with astronomy, with terrestrial magnetism,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?